Welcome to Entrepreneurs International Network, where entrepreneurs learn, network, and grow. I'm Roger Killen, the Community Manager. Today, Brooke Schiller is going to help you identify the 7 skills of highly effective entrepreneurs. Brooke, I've got 4 questions that will help us get to know you at a personal level. Question number 1, what is your superpower?
Well, thanks, Roger, and I'm happy to be here. And I think really my superpower is being able to sort of assess the situation, assess people's moods, emotions, feelings about something, and being able to create a safe and comfortable space to bring those out, to collaborate and to connect.
That is indeed a powerful superpower. Question number 2, what is your favorite way of relaxing?
Well, I'm excited to say I'm about to go do it. We're going to head off to Kauai this Saturday for a week. And I just love to be by the ocean, with warm breeze and a lounge chair or the sand. So that's what I'm planning on doing.
Okay. I envy you. Third question, what is the top quality that attracts you to other people?
Something that attracts me to other people is openness. The willingness and the ability to have, well, I should just say the willingness to have transparent and open conversation. Ability comes with time, and there really is no set formula for that, but openness for deep, transparent conversation, that really attracts me.
Okay. And final question, we each only have one life, one chunk of time on this planet. What impact would you like to have during your time on this planet?
Well, I know it's a big statement, but I would like to make the world a better place for the clients that I touch. I like to say I make the world a better place for leaders at all levels. And so that really opens it up. And I want to create an environment where people feel cared for and supported and heard and allowed to grow and flourish. So that's my purpose here.
A noble purpose. Well done. Now, participants, if at all possible, please turn on your video. In other words, come on camera. Brooke is going to get her energy from you. And there's precious little energy to be had whenever she can't see you, can look into your eyes and relate to you. So if it's possible, please turn on your camera. Secondly, stay muted and type any questions you've got into the chat. At about every 10-minute mark, I will aggregate your questions and pose them to Brooke. Rest assured, by the end of Brooke's talk, all your questions will have been answered by hook or by crook. Now, this workshop will be recorded, and the recording will be uploaded to the EIN YouTube channel. I will type the link several times and post that into the chat so you know where to go for the channel. Brooke, are you ready to knock our socks off?
I am, Roger. Thank you so much for the great introduction.
Then I'm going to disappear and leave you to it. Take it away, Brooke.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to know you all over the course of the last hour or so. I'm Brooke Schiller, and I am a speaker, coach, facilitator, and thought partner. I've spent my life's work in learning and organizational development, and I jumped off the career ladder, or realigned my career ladder, about 16 years ago to start my own consulting practice. And I have been a solopreneur ever since. And so I'm really excited that you're here today. And here's what we're going to cover. In our relatively short period of time, you will learn what I have found to be the 2 biggest myths about leadership. The 7 skills that leaders at all levels need to demonstrate in order to be their most effective selves. And we're going to start revealing the habits today that will support your leadership vision for the future. And I will encourage you to find somewhere, someplace to take notes throughout the talk today. Whatever grabs you, write it down, take notes. There's something that happens when it goes from thinking to writing that helps ingrain, and you'll be able to take away lots of nuggets from today's session that you'll be able to apply immediately. So I want to start with a quick story. I, about 6 months ago, was going on a trip, and I was in the San Francisco International Airport, and I looked over and I saw this. I saw a robot that was about to make my latte. So of course I had to go try it. But then I started researching, and we're starting to see robots pop up all over the place to do all sorts of things. And then I read that according to the World Economic Forum, 85 million jobs will be displaced and 97 million new jobs will be created by 2025. That's just a few short years away. And it reminded me, as it probably resonates with you, of why stepping into solopreneurship or rethinking or constantly thinking about your role, your job, and how you want to spend your working time is so critical. And the first myth I have come to realize in my life experience around leadership is that up is the only way, that it is a ladder that you must climb, that top is the best, the ladder is a struggle, and that leadership is about title and getting to the top. Now, for some people, that might be true, and that might work great for them. But for a lot of us, that's not true. And I lived through my own life experience where I had achieved what I thought was the pinnacle of success internally, only to find out that the view from the top wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and took a leap. So rather than a ladder, our careers are looking more like rock climbing expeditions, where sometimes you're going up, sometimes you're going back down, side to side, and really managing your career and your work life really is about core strength and continuing to work at it. So as solopreneurs, I think we really experience that firsthand. And I heard that in some of the examples and struggles you shared just now. So we're getting off the career ladder and we're taking a different look at leadership. And then the second myth, I just have a compilation of pictures here, but you've probably seen it. Up is the only way, the leader is in charge, everyone says good luck, or somehow it's all about people managers. That's the only way to grow and develop. We have to manage people. Or what's the difference between leadership and management? And believe me, I've spent my career in this space, in these models, and I've heard them time and time again. But I started to notice trends with people in my courses, people that I was coaching, asking why. Why do I have to manage people to be a leader? Why do I have to be the only one kind of bringing everybody along? And then it started to really get me thinking. So over the course of the last couple of years, I asked myself, there's got to be a better way. And that, given the many workplace trends that we have seen, not only before COVID, during COVID, and now as we're emerging, things like the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, which is the new term for I'm just backing off, not saying anything, and kind of slinking back from responsibility because there's no work-life balance. How and where we work. So are we in the office? Are we hybrid? How many days a week? And how we team. What does that look like? Does teaming mean that we are a group of people? Are we a family? Are we different people who have interdependencies? So there are lots of trends happening right now that also feed into there has to be a better way. And so what I've been working on is an innovative and scalable personal leadership model for leaders at all levels, regardless of how or where they choose to work, built on a foundation of 7 skills. So just to be clear, leadership in my book is not a title. It's not about tenure. It's how you show up as a human, as an individual. Your personal leadership skills will be the things that you can really use to define you in your market. So before we go through the 7 skills, I want to ground us in What are our reasons for leading? What are your reasons for becoming a solo entrepreneur? There are probably many. This model is called Ikigai. Perhaps you've heard of it. It is based on the health and wellness principles of traditional Japanese medicine, but it holds that physical well-being is affected by one's emotional health and sense of purpose in life. And so with that, there are several aspects. So we have to ask ourselves, do I love it? And one of the questions or answers I got when I asked myself when I stepped off the career ladder was, no, I didn't love it. Or I used to love it, but something had changed. So do you love it? Are you great at it? The intersection of that is your passion. So you love it, you're great at it, but then adding in, does the world need it? Can I bring this to market? So that becomes your mission, where love it and world needs it overlaps. And then, as we've already discussed today, can I get clients? Can I get paid for it? So the convergence of, are you paid for it and the world needs it, is your vocation. And then these are not in any particular order, but profession comes right in where the overlap is, are you great at it and are you paid for it? So what we're shooting for here, and what I work with my clients to help them figure out, is that point in the center where you love it, you're great at it, you're paid for it, and the world needs it, can converge. So it sounds like many of you have already decided what that is for you, but we know that solopreneurship is up and down. So if things are wavering, or you're not loving it as much as you used to, or you're not getting the clients that you had expected, you can work through this model and start asking yourself these questions. And maybe you even have some notes you want to take down right now on filling in and answering each of those 4 questions. When you have all 4 answered, you will hone in on your Ikigai or reaffirm what you already know. So I start there, and then I am building what I call a leadership playlist. So how many, I'm sure you've gone to leadership courses or courses where you've learned a bunch of stuff, you left, and nothing ever happened. And there's a lot of reasons for that, you probably know, but I have found for this sort of work to stick, for you to be able to apply it, you have to start at home or start in the heart. So what are your values? And then what's your mindset around your leadership capability and your desires? Then there's skill set. So we don't just go straight to skill set, but values, mindset, skill set, and then behaviors and habits. So with the intersection of these 5 things, you will not only be able to determine your Ikigai, but you will be able to take it from nice concept, Brooke, to action and put things into practice. So each one of the modules of the 7 skills follows this path. And I'm sure that you have done several activities over the course of your lifetime around values. This is just an image with some examples of values. You can look online, you can do online assessments. We're not going to do that today, but maybe you already know. I know for me, one of my values was freedom. And that really feeds into my solopreneurship journey. Not independence, but freedom. To me, that is a subtle nuance. I yearn to collaborate, but I like to be able to control my time and manage how I do things. So getting a clear sense of your values, and you can go to any online assessment. I have one as well, and you will probably be overwhelmed with the choices. You might say, I love all of these. All of these are my values, or I like a lot of these. And then I will encourage you to hone it down to 5. You may start at 10, then get to 5. But the reason for honing it down is because you can't do all things all the time. Really decide what's most important to you. And then those can be your drivers of your decisions for your work and in your personal life. So a values assessment, first activity. And if any of these on the screen stand out for you, feel free to write them down or write down what you already know about yours.
Brooke,
Yeah. Oh,
answer
sure.
your first question.
Yeah.
Can you repeat again what Ikigai means?
I sure can. So it is the convergence. I'll just go back really quick of you love it, the world needs it, you're paid for it, and you're great at it. And Ikigai is actually a Japanese term. It was made famous, if you will, by Japanese psychologist Michiko Kumano. I have to say that right. And it's a state of well-being that arises from devotion to activities one enjoys, which also brings a sense of fulfillment.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, so I'm going to go back up and scan through this. We talked about values. The next thing I want to touch on is mindset. So mindsets are leaders' mental lenses that dictate what information we take in and use to make sense of the world and the situations that we encounter. They drive what we do and why. So it's kind of, for example, why two leaders may look at the same situation and respond so differently. And there are several leadership mindsets. Some of them you've probably heard of. The first I'm going to start with is growth and fixed mindset. And mind you, I'm not saying versus, because I don't think that there's one that's better or worse. And as human beings, we're going to spend time in both. But a growth mindset, if we can spend more time in the growth mindset, which is I'm learning, lifelong learning, that really exemplifies growth. And if we can spend more time in a learning mindset versus performance, meaning I'm motivated by increasing my competence, not just being perfect all the time. I'm not being judged on my competence, but I'm motivated by mastering something new and the journey. If I can spend more time being deliberative, receptivity to new information, being open instead of implemental. And implemental is just basically tactical. I'm implementing decisions. So if I can be deliberative and be open to new things, it's a good sign. And if I can spend more time in the positive versus preventative mode. So when you're positive, you're focused on progress. If you're preventative, you're just trying to not make mistakes. And again, I don't like the versus word, so I scratched that. I think I just said that. It's either or, but the more you can spend in those blue mindset areas, the better that you will realize your solopreneurship skills and your skills out in the world. So let's dive in to the 7 skills. There are 7 skills that I have found over the course of my career that really have risen to the top again and again. And before I put them up, I just want to say how I got here. I've been standing in front of rooms of people delivering training, coaching for 25 plus years. So every time I do a workshop, on a flip chart, I'll just write up the key themes that are coming up in the room, and I take pictures of those and I save them. And so it's kind of my low key or low tech data mining that led me to the 7 skills. And then we just came through and are coming through COVID. And I kept reading articles again and again saying, here's where things went wrong in companies, but not a lot of people were defining how to help or to fix it. So that's where it all came together for me. And I came up with 7 skills based on my years doing this coaching and facilitative work. And it starts with self-awareness. Now, I will say these aren't in any particular order. However, I do feel like self-awareness is a really important first start. So in that module, you'll learn how to turn awareness of your own strengths, weaknesses, growth opportunities, and blind spots into action. Resilience. Gosh, we've had to be that, haven't we, over the years, over the last couple of years? But this is really where you'll learn how to recover quickly from challenges and expertly maneuver changes in the environment. Curiosity. Formulate and ask key questions in order to assimilate information and learn something new or different. what I'm calling nuanced thinking. Sometimes people use the word agile. I chose the word nuanced because really I feel like the world has become too binary. Yes or no, right or left, this or that. But the best thinking happens in the middle. So in this module, we'll talk about how we can shift our thinking as the situation requires to open ourselves up to new possibilities. All of that leading us to dialogue. How do we engage in respectful conversation with others to lead to mutual understanding when they agree with us and when they don't? Inspiration and motivation, I put those together because they work together. If you are mentally stimulated and you can stimulate others to think or feel something and take action, all of a sudden you're landing the clients. You are acquiring the clients. You are moving things forward. And finally, last but not least, initiative and accountability. So this is where we wrap things up and we talk about how we can take initiative independently to activate things and also take responsibility for the outcome. So those are the 7 key skills. They are personal leadership skills. So you won't find anything on this list about managing people. Not to say that's not important, but this is different. So it's really around all things that you can do on your own. And just for a moment, imagine a world where everyone around you was doing this too. So I do workshops where there are reporting relationships in them. There are client relationships in them. People are learning together, sometimes even in an open enrollment setting, and they're learning side by side. So when they go out to apply, they've learned it together and they're ready to go. So with that being said, I'm going to dive into each of the 7 skills. This is going to be a little bit rapid fire. So take notes on what intrigues you. If we have time at the end, we'll come back to it. And I'll also give you some tips on how to find me if you want to go deeper. So the first skill we're going to look at is self-awareness. I already mentioned what our goal is there, but I'm going to start with a quick exercise. Perhaps you've seen this before. Perhaps you've seen this image before. And if you are willing to type into the chat or let Roger know what comes up for you when you see this image, and he can let me know. And what comes up for you when you see this image? It's basically the same image, but a lot of times when I do this exercise, at least 2, if not more, things emerge. How many of you see, oh, I'm going to look at the chat maybe. Yes. How many of you see a young lady? How many of you see an old lady? How many of you see both? How many of you have seen this before? The reason why I like to share this one as a starting point for self-awareness is that you will see the world differently, and it's based on your perceptions. Your perceptions come from all of your life experiences, and then you use those perceptions and bring them in with you to every life experience, every experience with clients, colleagues, stakeholders, partners. And so in this module on self-awareness, we dive into the notion of emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence has several components. First of all, we start with self. Understanding what's going on for us. And then social, understanding what's going on outside of us. So that was one of the things I mentioned as one of my superpowers. So that's all about who am I? So who am I and what am I noticing in the environment? Then we have self-management and social skills, which are both related to what I do and how I regulate myself. So self-manage, how do I control how I'm feeling and acting? And how do I manage what's going on in my environment? So in this module, we go deep into assessing our awareness, our regulation, how we manage ourselves, and how we handle our relationships. In doing this, one of the things I found is that I've got great self-awareness, but sometimes my regulation went off track. And understanding where we need to focus versus where we are doing well really helps us harness skills that we can use with our clients, our family members, and in our businesses. So emotional intelligence is a really deep topic. It's one of the key things that we cover in the self-awareness module. So just to give you a snapshot. So what I will ask you for this, before we move on to the next, is on your own, privately, wherever you're taking notes, if there is one area that you would say, yes, I'm really good at that, write it down. If there's an area where you're like, oh yeah, that's where I go off the rails, write that down. That will be your note taking for today and something we can dig deeper into.
Brooke, are you open
Yeah.
to a question?
I am.
I'm looking at the photograph, the image earlier, and I'm wondering, how can there be anything other than a young woman with lots of hair?
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
How
So,
how can you see an old woman in that image?
well, it's all about, I'm going to quickly go back and I'll just do my animation here. I'll give you a hint. Okay. So, if I describe the young lady looking away, maybe she is a socialite. This is her elegant chin and her jawline. She's looking away from us. And this is her neckline and maybe a necklace down here. And then if I describe the older lady, like say I called her a witch or something, and described a woman with a harder life, or maybe she's a little sad. And instead of being the neckline, this is now over here, her pointy chin, her straight mouth, her big nose, her right eye, and her left eye. So I will encourage you to look this up, Google this image, continue to look, because while you may not see it right now, when you keep looking, sometimes closing one eye, cocking your head, having someone explain it to you really helps bring it to life.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to scan through that, and then I'm going to move on to resilience. And the skill of resilience is recovering quickly from challenges and maneuvering changes in the environment. As I mentioned, boy, did we have to do that over the last couple of years, but this has always been a key skill. So resilience is about minimizing the impact of risk factors and enhancing protective factors. So how do people overcome challenging life experiences in our businesses and in our lives? Most people react to circumstances with a surge of negative effect and sense of uneasiness. Yet over time, they somehow adjust and adapt. They bounce back, but it takes time. It is often a significant source of stress because they haven't quite tapped into, why am I reacting this way? But what if I examine it differently? What are the positive aspects? Successful adaptation despite challenging circumstances. It's really about finding that inner strength, competence, optimism, flexibility. And when we do that, we start to really enhance those protective factors, and then our resilience comes back to life. We bounce back, we're able to recover more quickly. If we get mired in the risk, it's harder to bounce. So the equation that I've equated over time is that resilience is made up of a lot of parts that you will see are woven through this curriculum, but it's a combination of emotional intelligence, resilient thinking. So yes, we can, optimism, what could be the bright side, and giving yourself time for balance and recovery. I'm hearing a lot right now of this notion of people quiet quitting. I think I mentioned it on one of my earlier slides, because they have no balance. And as solopreneurs, we know this to be true. Our workplace is often in our homes. And so providing that time for balance and recovery, stepping outside, whatever it takes. So you can do that by honing in on your positive outlook, social connection, Who are your friends, your family, even friends in your business? Your emotional regulation, that we learned about from emotional intelligence. Nuanced thinking, there it is. So it's a function of resilient thinking. So it's not just either or, but how do we think about other options? And I'll get there. Values and mindset, which are part of our model and the structure of the modules, and self-awareness. So there's another piece there from emotional intelligence. And balancing demands. So this is really, this is animated in such a way, but there's no one that are any greater, better, or worse than any others. But it's really kind of, again, noticing, where do I think I have strength and where do I have opportunity? And in the module, the longer module, we go through this and we do an assessment, we talk about it, we make an action plan so that you are walking out more resilient to a challenge that you are currently facing. So I'll ask you to think about it in those terms as well. All right, so we're going to move on to skill number 3, curiosity. And in this one, we talk about the power of flow. And flow, that concept of flow, was popularized by, I'm going to try to say it right, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And he's one of the founders of the field of positive psychology and a pioneering researcher in the area of flow. According to his work, there is a direct relationship between our attention and our interest in the world. So nothing is really interesting until we focus our attention on it, and vice versa. So if finding clients, marketing, putting ourselves out there, like, well, I love doing the work. I'm a solopreneur. I want to do the work. I don't want to do that marketing stuff. We're not going to do it until we put our attention on it, which is something we were talking about earlier. So it's about becoming curious. So something might not be interesting until we begin focusing on it. The young lady, the old lady might not be interesting until we start talking about making up a story about her life and what she might be going through. We can develop our curiosity and fight boredom by making a conscious effort to direct our attention to something in particular in our environment. And that's the flow channel. So it's the sweet spot between anxiety and boredom, or challenge and skill. Curiosity lives there. So you're just pushed enough to want to pursue something, but not stressed out. And you have developed a level of curiosity. I mean, if something's boring, you don't want to explore it, right? So the difference between being interested in something and curious about something is the inspiration to take action. And that's the curiosity cycle that we explore in this module. So first of all, I'm going to ask you right now, just off the cuff, as we're moving through this together, think of a topic that you're interested enough in to explore your curiosity. And then you are going to describe that, write that down somewhere, wherever you're taking notes. And then ask yourself, what makes you curious about it? Who might know something about that topic? So you're going to engage on the topic and you're going to ask about it. You're going to start asking questions, asking your network, asking others for help, kind of like what we did in our 6-minute problem solving sessions. Next, you're going to investigate and create. So what other sources could you investigate? You might have some things right in front of you, but are there other things to look at, other things to uncover? And then what themes are emerging and what hypotheses can you make? And then share and reflect back. Who will you share your findings with? What feedback or new information did you discover in the process of sharing? And how will you make space to reflect on the feedback and or new information and assimilate it, which leads me to taking action. What are your next key actions? curiosity is just curiosity until we go through the steps and we prepare to take action on what we've investigated. So let me pause there. Any questions, Roger, so far?
No, you're obviously wowing us with your wisdom because there are no questions.
All right, so then I will say, think of something that you're curious about right now for your business and write it down. And now's the time to take action. Who can you, what books can you research, articles, how can you research it, investigate, create your hypothesis, share it back, feed it back to others, get reactions, and take action. Curiosity is a good thing, but it needs to lead to effective action. So moving on to skill number 4. Again, I call this nuanced thinking because it involves us solving complex problems by consciously shifting one's thinking as the situation requires. And I'm pulling this piece from Adam Grant's work. He wrote a book called Think Again. And he talks about 3 modes of thinking that we sometimes get trapped in.
Brooke, could you define what you mean by the word nuanced?
Oh, sure. Yes. Nuanced is complex, varietal, agile, not just thinking in binary terms, but thinking with complexity.
So if I used the term thinking outside the box, I would get close.
You would get close. Yes, I think that's a great way and a great term that most of us can understand. Yes. So thinking outside the box, but often easier said than done. Just think about the news you watch, where you get your information, even what we heard about COVID, this, that, right or wrong. And often, so often, we don't take the time to look at the gray area in the middle or think outside the box.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in order to think outside the box, you have to kind of understand where you're coming from. And there are 3 modes of thinking that Adam talks about in his book. The first, and these are not in any particular order, but when you are preaching, you are convinced that you're right. From a salesperson, a solopreneur, to a clergyman, this is the style you use when you're trying to persuade others to your way of thinking. And often when we're out there trying to sell ourselves or our product, we are pretty sure of that. So we might fall into preaching mode. Prosecuting is the next one. When we're in this mode, we are trying to prove someone else wrong. Now, we're probably not there as much as solopreneurs, but sometimes it comes up and you might also experience it in your circles, either from potential clients or your competition. And politicking is the third. When you're in politician mode, you're trying to win the appeal of your audience. So what will you say to do that? What will you give away? Will you underprice yourself? Will you throw things in, not really thinking about what are the impacts to me? So maybe you saw or see yourself in one or more of these. I know that I tend to fall into sometimes the politician, and then when I'm in sometimes in front of the classroom or coaching, I have to watch my inner preacher. So it's something, even as a practitioner, where I do this on the daily, I am learning and practicing these skills. So my question for you here is, which one sounds most like you? And write it down, develop that awareness. And then to your question, or to the participants' question about what do I mean by nuanced? I think this model will help define that even more. So this comes from the whole brain model, the Herman brain, and it talks about different thinking styles, 4 to be exact. So depending on your preferences, you might be an analytical thinker, an experimental thinker, a relational thinker, or a structural thinker? You might like things to be more concrete or more abstract. Or do you like to be more intuitive or more rational? We all have preferences baked in to who we are. Taking us back to the perception slide I shared earlier, it's baked into who we are. But if we can better understand our preferences and how we think, then we know and we can recognize, oh, I'm doing it again. I'm going straight to emotions, or I'm going straight to rational facts, or I'm talking abstractly, and I'm pitting it against the opposite style. We want to do less pitting against and more seeking to understand that all these styles are useful, helpful, and valuable. And it is really important to recognize and appreciate not only where we sit, what our preferences are, but what the thinking styles might be for your potential clients, your prospects, your current clients, and people you work with. I have found in working through this model that I am more on the intuitive, experimental side. So up here in this upper right-hand corner, and knowing that has really helped me because I can then say, all right, who's my prospect? From cues they're giving me, what do I think their thinking style is? Do I get it right every time? No, but by taking the time to assess and put my prospect or my client through this and just noticing clues that they're giving me, I can get pretty close. So if I realize that my client is a structural thinker, then what can I do to adapt my approach to suit them, to allow them to hear me, and to stay out of the preaching and the politicking? So that's just an example in my own life of how I use this model as a solopreneur and how it's been useful for me. All right, I'm going to keep continuing on, and I'll listen for you, Roger, when there are questions that emerge. But the fifth skill we're going to talk about is dialogue. And this model is called advocacy and inquiry. And really, it's the combination of talking and listening. I'm just going to boil it down to simple terms because that helps me. But when you're advocating, you are speaking, you're talking, you're asserting, you're influencing, consulting. When you are inquiring, you're asking lots of questions. You are listening. So high advocacy is asserting, influencing, and consulting, where low advocacy is really, sort of sitting back and observing behavior, listening. High inquiry is going to involve asking questions and then sitting back and listening. And low inquiry is I am either going to be in an observer mode or I'm going to be out there asserting something. So we use a little bit of all of these in our approaches. Obviously, many of us see ourselves in that upper right-hand corner because we are, as solopreneurs, influencing and consulting. But how much time do we spend in some of these other areas, like observing and listening in particular? I think we use asserting when we get to the solution and we've worked through it with a client, and we can advocate for something, but only after we've paid attention to cues and clues, asked good questions, and listened to the answers. So like some of the other models I've introduced, you probably have a preference. You might see yourself in this. And some of these might come more naturally for you. Others might be more of a stretch. But that's what, again, wherever you're taking notes, I want you to make note of that. What do you think is your superpower? And what do you think is an area of opportunity? And wherever you write down an opportunity, that's an area for growth that you can explore, and it's building your self-awareness. So I'm just going to throw out some scenarios. Some of these you may have experienced or something like this. These are what could go well or could go wrong. So let's just say you start arguing for a position in a brainstorm meeting. You come in, your solution is clear to you because that's what you're trying to sell, and you start arguing for that position. There can be problems and risks associated with that. You probably mean well, I'm sure you do, but being aware of the potential risks and problems. Or maybe you ask so many open-ended questions that you're not asserting at all. You ask too many open-ended questions, they're doing all the talking, which is helpful, but you're not getting your voice in the room at all. So again, a different set of risks, but something to be aware of. Or are you sometimes a victim of inviting ideas from others, even though your mind is already made up? I used to know someone who said, I'm open to all ideas, but here's my bias. And just by saying that, this person stopped dialogue. And so really being aware of your biases going in, see if you can set them aside and be actively open. And the last is you remain in endless inquiry, always seeking input and rarely deciding. So this happened to me as a solopreneur early on in my career. I was asking so many questions of the client about stakeholders, what I should expect, what the landmines might be, that it actually caused them to doubt me. So I was in so much inquiry that I wasn't moving things forward. So learn the hard way. We sometimes learn the hard way, but understanding that the right combination of advocacy and inquiry really is the sweet spot. It's the recipe for balance. All right. With that being said, let's move on to skill number 6, inspiration and motivation. All right, so with this, it's really about being mentally stimulated and stimulating others to think or feel something and take action. And that's a two-way street. I got to do it for myself and I can help others. So I don't need to rely on the leader or the manager to do it for me. It's already within, but I have to harness it. So in order to find your inspiration and to be able to motivate others, it really starts with vision, the ability of one's mind to clearly see a specific or desired outcome at some point in the future. And that's really vital to inspire others and to be inspired. What are we shooting for? What's the moonshot? So what's the vision? And by doing that, if you can articulate your vision, you can create new connections in the brain, and that triggers future potential. So that's what I mean by vision, why that's so important to this process. And then you need to be passionate. So strong emotion that moves people to do their best. It moves them to be excited and inspired. It's the emotional energy that drives action. This kind of ties back to Ikigai. So what are you passionate about? And then trust. That's the link between me and you, how I take my vision and passion and connect us. So trust defines human relationships. When trust flourishes, so do relationships. And then all of a sudden now, people get excited about your ideas because they trust you and they're excited to move forward. So there are 3 types of inspiration that we talk about in this particular module. And this comes from the About My Brain neuro leadership model. I've been studying the brain-body connection. And for this one, this really resonated for me. And I've noticed it to be true in my own life. But there's intrinsic motivation. It's spontaneous. It's an internal process. It emerges naturally, and it's not the result of external stimuli. So you're excited about something. You're curious, right? It's that bridge between interest and curious. Something sparks. Extrinsic is active inspiration, when you're inspired by external elements that stimulate you into action. So maybe it's a client, maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's a new book you read, a speaker you heard on a stage. That inspires you to take action. A course like this one. And then there's relational. And this is between two people. So this is a transactional inspiration when you develop the ability to motivate and inspire others. So a lot of things stimulate intrinsic, extrinsic, and relational inspiration. Connecting with values and passions, being sincere, genuine, ethical, authentic to build trust. Focus on the idea, the solution, and the opportunity rather than the problem. So that's that positive mindset. Resiliency. You're facilitating insight. So you do it for yourself. Then you can do it with your clients and your prospects. And encouraging people along. Often, we even heard it here today, we have problems, we have setbacks, but how do we find the inspiration to keep going? So it's the magic that happens between when I've got it and then when I help connect it with you. And it starts with self, starts at home, and then builds from there. Any questions, Roger?
And we're all quiet on the Western Front.
Okay.
No questions.
All right. Okay, and then our final skill is initiative and accountability. And I kind of did put this at the last because I think this really is a point where we sum it up and bring it into action. And this is a combination of skill set and behaviors. So when we think about initiative and accountability, and when I was putting this model together, I had a lot of people ask me, well, doesn't someone ultimately have to be accountable? Yeah, when you're on a team setting. And sure, right? If you are in a hierarchical team setting where the ladder is the only way, yeah, the buck stops somewhere. And when you're a solopreneur, the buck stops with you, right? But imagine a world where we were all taking action and being accountable for our actions. I just dream of a world where that takes place. And that was the inspiration for this. Anyone can do it, but again, easier said than done. So I pulled this information. I was inspired by the Gallup organization for this. And they talked about 5 things that you can do to not only take initiative, but instill accountability in others and yourself. So no matter if you're on the solopreneur side, you are trying to instill accountability in somebody else, maybe your client or a subcontractor or a partner, it starts with common purpose. So why? Why are we doing this? Why does this matter? Getting on the same page for what our shared purpose is key. So when you follow these steps, it will minimize the amount of accidents that can happen or getting off track. So start with a common purpose. Then in our workshop, we talk about establishing clear goals. So the who is going to do what and what does success look like? So you'll walk through setting a purpose, clear goals, and then connecting and align. Connect and align. So how are we going to do this? And how do we set this up for success? So this can be a great tool. And I've used this in my interaction with clients. Like, what's our project plan? We've come up with purpose together. We've set our goals together. Now let's make sure we know what success looks like and how often we're going to check in and what that check-in looks like. Coach and collaborate. So we might have to course correct. Not everything works out exactly how we planned, even if we plan it, but I guarantee you the chances of it working out if you plan it are better than if you don't. So how do we adjust and ask, how's it going? How do we ask ourselves that, our client that? How do we have that conversation? And then celebrate and course correct as needed. You might get positive and or negative feedback, but you learn and act. And this kind of goes back to the curiosity cycle, the resilience, and some of the concepts that we've talked about. So that's how these skills come together. They, in each module, they follow, and you'll see by the code on the left, they follow values, mindset, skill set, behaviors, habits. You'll complete worksheets where you'll map this out. And there will be pieces as a solopreneur that you won't be able to finish because you need to connect with your clients or your partner or your subcontractor. That becomes your homework. And between each module, we have coaching. So you and I can meet. I meet with clients in between to help them activate what they're learning. So finally, I want to prepare to start transitioning and work in some Q&A here too. And I want to talk a little bit about habits. If you have not picked up Atomic Habits by James Clear, I highly encourage you to do so. Because as I mentioned when we started this, I gave you a lot of information in a short time. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you about a masterclass that I'm running. But even in an hour or 2 hours, it's often too much without practice and habit building. So in the book Atomic Habits, the author talks about habit stacking. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. So I'm going to try to think back to some of our challenges we talked about in the first hour of our session together today. So one of the things we talked about was making time for marketing. So it's on my calendar, as I mentioned earlier to Tamara. How do I make it attractive? Well, I found that I enjoy doing it more when I use something like HubSpot, or I have a tool that makes it fun for me, where I can, set up follow-up. But whatever makes it attractive for you, is it sitting outside in nature? Is it sitting with your cup of tea? But make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So make it easy. It just follows right off of your other habits. So if my morning routine is I sit up from bed, I make my morning coffee, I go sit down in a chair in my backyard, I check my HubSpot, it's enjoyable, I'm getting it done, but I've now created a habit stack. So obvious, so I can't work around it, it's on my calendar. It's attractive because I get to drink my yummy coffee. It's easy because I've built in this time, and it's satisfying because it's done and I have managed to accomplish it. And you do that every day. And so it doesn't have to take an hour or longer. It can take 15 minutes, but it's a habit stack that you pair with other things that you do. So we work on a habit tracker in the coursework. You'll be developing habit stacks for each of the modules. You'll have worksheets and things that you'll work through so that you're actually walking away with activities, homework, and tasks and accountability to bringing these skills to life. So with that being said, I am going to pause, take a breath, and I'm open for Q&A.
So participants, why don't you unmute yourselves, and rather than type questions into the chat, just fire them orally directly at Brooke. I don't hear any, Brooke, so why don't you move on?
Okay. Well, I have found oftentimes you think of them later. So after you've had a chance to absorb. So I know I went through this at lightning speed today. And so I am offering a masterclass where we will spend more time. We will spend an hour on each of these modules, each of the 7 skills. It will be 8 consecutive Wednesdays, starting September 28th through the 16th. And in that time, you will be able to come together It's open enrollment with like-minded professionals to really put these skills into practice. You will receive coaching with me as included, and you'll receive all the worksheets and materials included in the price. And so for this offering, I'm offering the complete series for $160 US, which is about 20 per session, or you can buy the sessions individually based on what is most relevant for you. And you can contact me at my email, brooke@incitepartner.com, if you're interested in enrolling. And I would love to see you there. It's a lot of value in a relatively short period of time, and we can go deeper on these concepts. And here is how to continue the conversation. You can meet with me. You can put time on my calendar by going to meetwithbrookenow.com. You've got my email, and you can also follow me and my other offerings on my Linktree. So you can take a snapshot of this page and you will have all the ways to connect with me.
Brooke, question. Of the 7 critical skills to be an effective solopreneur, is there a number 1 and a number 7, or are all created equal?
Yeah, okay. In terms of hierarchy, all are created equal. However, I will say for you, there are going to be some that are top of mind right now. Like, oh, I really need the nuanced thinking right now. I have a client, that's where I need to focus. So how I will run the masterclass in a sequential order, but you can come and go, and all of the skills are interchangeable. So you can come in at any time and come what's relevant for you, but they're not in any hierarchy. Although I do have a little bit of a bias for self-awareness as number 1. Full disclosure.
Great. Thank you. Brooke, I hear no further involvement, so why don't you move into some closing remarks?
Great. Well, I really just wanted to say thank you for your time. I know that this is a investment in time. You never know what you're going to get. And I really want to create a space for you where you're taking away nuggets of learning that you can apply right away. These skills, though, I mean, yes, I can coach you, I can teach you, and I would love to do that. But the secret is that they're already inside you. And you need to access them. And once you start looking inward and cultivating those skills, you will see a lot of benefit. I'm already noticing, and my clients are telling me that they've already experienced benefit as well in the companies and in the client situations that they've worked for. So it's already within you. Sometimes it just needs a little coaxing. So I'm happy to be that person for you if it works out.
Well, that was just wonderful. Brooke, on behalf of EIN's 80,000 members, the vast majority of whom are solopreneurs, I thank you hugely for identifying these 7 key pillars of success. Very often we are strong in 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them, but it's the others that we lack strength in that actually come and bite us in the bum. So thank you very, very much for making it clear that these are not, these are actually synergistic. Together, yes, they make for a really, really strong solopreneur. That is a hugely important and very clear message. Thank you hugely.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all for being here.